Misilleeka is no longer a hero, but an anti-hero, eventually taking the role of a villain. This time, she's handing out cards to her allies so they can get their share of the story. At least Leeka will get his cake. But not eating it, though. Not yet. Hello everyone, Obscure Titan here with another essay video. To recap, Misilleeka was previously a naive heroine who was searching for her purpose in serving Crystal Celestia's military regime, helping her allies win missions and befriending a genie princess, whom she helped during an invasion. The next episode afterwards delved into the darker side of Misilleeka, as her disdain towards Sakrak slowly turned into an insane hatred with the death of Levigrag, her angel father. She led a revolution to destroy Crystal Celestia and killed Sakrak. On that same day, she did the same to Overlord Degilax, only sparing Nexus Netherworld and taking it over. Misilleeka now spends the remainder of Episode 3, and the 2019 edition, going through different realms, facing various challenges, and discovering secrets of her allies, Diatra being one of them. While the story format is similar, the focus isn't as straightforward as the former two, but we'll still have a time passage in between chapters. So let's begin. 25,800 years have passed since Misilleeka took over Nexus Netherworld, and everything has gone as usual with her in charge this time around. Feeling proud of a new era, Misilleeka thought that she could face no opposition. However, Zolkar, concerned about his former apprentice's response, asked if there were any survivors from their insurrection in Crystal Celestia. Misilleeka rebutted by saying Sakrak's minions have already been wiped out. Seeing him as confused, Misilleeka asked if Zolkar felt there weren't clear of any opposition and sadly responded with a yes. As they talked, Professor Zoldak steps into Misilleeka's throne room to offer news of reports regarding to survivors from Crystal Celestia, who aided Sakrak before his murder. Suggesting they could pull an insurrection similar to hers, Misilleeka suggests that she and Zolkar should travel down below Nexus Netherworld and kill her remaining enemies who stuck with Sakrak. Inside a giant chamber, Misilleeka and Zolkar enter a large shuttle, but instead of a space one, its wings were curved back and has a drill up front with sharp edges curling from the thick bottom of the top. With Zolkar and a few Seraphim by her side, Misilleeka prepares a launch deep into the crust of Nexus Netherworld. Once it launches, the ship drills its way through the dirt into the caverns filled with crystals, rocks, and soil. The ship arrives into a deep chasm and gently lands near it. Misilleeka and her allies step out of it to see the area they entered. Throughout their stay inside the cave, Misilleeka and Zolkar went through a passage that leads them to a cliff hovering over Sakrak's remaining troops, sitting next to a fire pit. The queen declared that the general and his troops should go to the opposite passage and corner the Sakrak defenders so she can assassinate them. But as they did, Zolkar and the Seraphim stumble upon a giant creature known as the Amethyst Cardis, a reptilian species resembling 98 Zilla with crystal shards on its back. A similar breed known as Amber Cardis would confront Godzilla in Godzilla vs. Misilleeka years later. Dreading it, Zolkar and his troops quietly walked through the cave to the passage ahead of them, not making a loud noise near the beast, aside from gentle clanking noises, which is akin to silverware being gently put away. Successful in their crossing, Zolkar and the Seraphim make their way inside the passage and corner Sakrak's minions. The survivors, Zerak being the supposed head of the group, take notice of Zolkar and try to fight back, but Misilleeka comes down and killed him, leaving the two leaderless and died by the general and Seraphim's hands. This bloodshed awoke the Amethyst Cardis and begins to burrow everywhere, causing the caves to crumble. Misilleeka and Zolkar lead their troops out of the chaos and return to their ship on time before the cave could collapse. Once in, they all leave. Delighted in her success, Misilleeka maniacally cheered for it, knowing that all of Sakrak's troops are dead. Or are they? Following the event of the cave's collapse, Misilleeka holds a meeting with Zolkar, Jigra, Sleeka, and Zoldak. Misilleeka congratulated Zolkar in leading an efficient ambush and taking down their remaining opponents from Sakrak's regime. Doubtful of this, Sleeka suggests that there could be more, with Zolkar rebutting him, Both were about to have a heated argument until Misilleeka silenced them. She assures her warriors that their dynasty will remain strong no matter who goes against them. Demons, jinn, etc. Fuck them all. Misilleeka rules them all. Or does she? 7,000 years later, Misilleeka flies throughout what seem to be crystal shards poking out like claws. Landing near the ground, she arrives with her wings folding in. Seeing Lieutenant Misilleeka, she approaches by calling him out. Annoyed by this, Misilleeka frustratingly turns around to see her. He rudely addressed her to my somewhat irritating and notorious warlord, which understandably upsets Misilleeka, albeit subtly so, demanding that he'd address her properly. Misilleeka addresses her properly, though still coming off as rude. Misilleeka reported to him regarding a suspicious activity on a dwarf planet nearby and should check it out. Still throwing a whining tantrum, Misilleeka asked when they are starting. This led to an argument over his attitude problems, with Misilleeka suggests to show respect if he wants appreciation. This eventually resulted to the grumpy lieutenant about to continue, only for Misilleeka to scare him into silence. Once this was done and over with, they flee. Flying across a crystal field, Misilleeka and Misilleeka arrive to a platform inside a chamber shaped like a rib cage. Ahead is a portal. Still in a foul mood, Misilleeka asks about Misilleeka's plans, leading to a warning that if he continued to argue with her, she would consider Diatra to take over the mission, and so he shut his mouth and entered the portal. Entering the portal, Misilleeka and Misilleeka confront a group of demon soldiers inside a red-tinted room with yellow lines on the floor, like a laser tag arena. Misilleeka and Misilleeka rush through the area and slaughter the troops with their combined speed and cunning. The lieutenant launches his missiles everywhere to blow up the soldiers. One by one, they all exploded. Only one missed, but was eventually torn apart by Misilleeka's ferocity. Two more enter the fight. These are larger troops, those like that of minotaurs, and have giant hammers. Misilleeka flies up in the air with her spear and spins to attack. Misilleeka aided her by using his missiles to penetrate the brutes' backs. Stung like wasp stingers, the two brute soldiers yelped in pain as fire spreads all over them. Impressed by Misilleeka's performance in combat, Misilleeka congratulates him. Both head towards a passage inside the room which leads them to a chamber, walking through cautiously though, as a deep, raspy voice echoed declaring that he is Overlord Gilex's second in command. Once inside the room, Misilleeka and Misilleeka check to see anyone prepping up a surprise attack. The second in command was named General Zorb. Zorb makes his monologue about how he's going to have Misilleeka's head, and then results to Misilleeka nagging at him over it, which of course reveals the general himself, tall, slender, and mainly covered in armor, having a sense of vengeance for Overlord Gilex. Zorb challenges Misilleeka and Misilleeka to a fight, and so it begins. All fought furiously. Zorb uses his sickles to fend off against his enemy's spear and saw blades, hoping to kill from behind. Misilleeka aims her spear. However, the general turns around with Misilleeka and had the lieutenant stabbed instead. Using one of his sickles, he stabbed Misilleeka in the abdomen and hurled her out of his way, with Zorb's hoop pressed onto Misilleeka next to an energy orb. He was ready to kill her, but was stopped by Misilleeka, who used one of his saw blades to gut the general in half, rendering him dead. Suddenly, hissing noises came from the cracks of the energy orb, as Misilleeka and Misilleeka backed out to leave. Desperate to survive, they both ran through the hallway they came into upon arrival prior to their fight with Zorb, and launched into the portal from where they came from. Just moments before the enemy base imploded, Misilleeka and Misilleeka are hurled back to the dark fields of Nexus Netherworld. Initially, Misilleeka called him the craziest buffoon she's ever worked with, but in turn, thanked him for saving her life. Had he not acted the way he did, her head would have been on a pike by Zorb. 25 years later, Misilleeka enters Professor Zoldak's lab and notices Diatra is in there. Curious of the scene, she asks about what's up, and the professor explained that Diatra asked to get examined. As it turns out, Diatra may have had a pure-blooded genie as a father as well as her mother's, and that Jurkak was her adoptive father. Misilleeka asked what she's been hiding, and the princess grew nervous about all this, realizing that her longevity and powers would be linked to her genes. Like a patient getting nervous over a blood pressure exam, her world was tumbling all over. this led to sparks of blue flames fuming from her pant leggings. She stood between Misilleeka and Zoldak, and the flames vanished. Misilleeka tried to ease the tension and offered Deatra an opportunity to explain herself as a friend. Swallowing up her anxiety, Deatra admitted that she had a pure genie father, feeling bad that Jurkak never told her the truth. Deatra has been a pure genie from birth. Unlike most family dynasties where half genies would exist, arguably one of the last pure genies to be born from both parents without being shackled to a vessel, the same way as they did. Zolkar enters the lab and informs Misilleeka and crew regarding mysterious creatures in exotic attires, implying that they appear as Turkish gypsies. Misilleeka marches out of the room to see outside of the palace, taking Deatra as backup and Professor Zoldak to analyze the scene to capture the genies. Outside, Misilleeka, Zoldak, Zolkar, and Deatra examine the area beyond palace walls. Zoldak looks at his gauntlet's tablet to find out the whereabouts of the genies. He eventually gets notifications of suspicious activity, but nothing visual beyond his device's map. Continuing further, Misilleeka and crew cautiously looked all over the crystal fields until stumbling upon a portal opening in front of them. From it, spewed forth a view of a hallway with gold floors, chromed pillars, and statues of genies with chains shackled from their bracelets down to pots of spiraling flames. Keeping the same level of caution, Misilleeka and her allies enter, from the dark, rainy storm of Nexus Netherworld to the bright, royal hallways of the Genie Realm. Just in the first 3 episodes of the storyline, it's called the Jinn Realm. However, the other entries in the Mortal Brothers 2019 canon, it's referred to as the Genie Realm. Proceeding onward, Zoldak's device beeped in an alarmingly high rate, indicating enemy threat coming their way. Taking notice of it, they turned behind and had their weapons out to attack, but no effect was done to fight them back. Taking the lamps and oil in hand, Deatra and Misilleeka prepared to capture some genies. They held a position until the genies would show up and then execute the plan. Deatra sparked fire and began imprisoning more jinn swirling around them, and got captured in the process. A loud voice shouted through the entire area with, "Valrich!" The alarm on Zoldak's gauntlet kept beeping, and proceeded to a brass-colored chamber, chains linked to a bright light with fire dancing all around it. It blasted Misilleeka, Zoldak, and Deatra. It morphed into 4 arms and 2 legs, each having a bracelet hooked to the room's walls like a prisoner in a dungeon, translucent pants, sleeves, and veil. Her name was Glordax. She threatened to attack Misilleeka and her allies if they persist. A battle ensues with the genie throwing her powerful attacks across her prison chamber. Throughout the fight, Zoldak attempts to distract the jinn while dodging fireballs spewing around. Deatra follows the professor in his plan and gets the jars in preparation to defeat Glordax. Once in hand, Zoldak aims it at the genie with a new set of chains formed to cling it to her, causing different gauntlets to overlap one another. The chains of the jar were causing the room to rip Glordax apart, causing her to explode into brick dust. Once she was defeated, the fire spreads all over the area as Misilleeka and her allies fled to the portal they went through prior to meeting Glordax and escaped into their homeworld. Relieved with their success, Zoldak assured to Misilleeka and Deatra that this should be the last of them. For now. 800 years later, Misilleeka takes a stroll across the crystal fields, reminiscing over Nexus Netherworld's gems and treats them like flowers. Crystal flowers would be nice to have in my work office. Jigra approaches her queen to inform her about suspicious activity within the rims of Nexus Netherworld, possibly bandits, more aligned with the late Degailax. Misilleeka offered Jigra an opportunity to contribute on a plan to deal with the bandits. Jigra suggested disguise themselves as them, but with some cohorts to consider. They don't know what they're wearing. Instead, she has Nexus Zornai to help out as minions to attack them, calling Zolkar and Sleeka to have a container prepped to carry them. Misilleeka and Jigra get ready to head over to the rims of their homeworld. Up in the dark blue sky, Misilleeka and Jigra are on a ship, shaped like a fork with long horns for wings, flying across. Underneath is a case with 2 Nexus Zornai inside. The container's walls were so thick like diamonds, they can't even break it. Upon arrival to an asteroid field, the ship lands the container on the ground. It opened and the Zornai crawl out of it. Misilleeka and Jigra place their oxygen masks on in preparation of entering space. But the Zornai are amphibious, Their main source of life are the energy of shards on their shoulders. Thus, the creatures can survive lack of oxygen. Guiding the monsters her way, Misilleeka and Jigra fly across the asteroid field to find the bandits. They did come to a giant piece of debris and discover their location where the invaders try to infiltrate through the area of resources. Solok and Gerbok are the bandits in gray suits and crystal clear globes for oxygen helmets. They discussed their progress in drilling the gems. However, as they did, the Nexus Zorni arrived and jumped in to attack them. Solok abandoned Gerbok as the bandit was unfortunate to die by the monster's hunger. The bandit who left tried getting out to escape, but was stopped by Misilleeka. She grabbed him with her tail's sharp edge and lifts him up close. Scared for his life, Solok begged Misilleeka to spare him and never steal the gems again. Misilleeka demanded Jigra to call the Zorni up and lure them after Solok. She offered to let him live if he were to serve her. The bandit scoffed at the opportunity by suggesting that there is honor in death more than servitude for a syndicalist warlord. She pressures Solok to make a choice before she can feed him to the Zorni. Growing impatient with him, she tosses him back inside the asteroid. Slowly, I might add, due to zero gravity, and gets caught by the monster's claws. Pleased with the bandit's death by the Zorni, Misilleeka and Jigra declare the mission accomplished. 1 year later, Misilleeka and her allies are inside a temple. As they walked, a seraphim approached them with some news. A concert was ready. Hearing this news, Misilleeka confirms she has the scripts in preparation to lead the choir and band. Going outside of the temple, she sees rows of seraphim, dragons, zucrami, and rings standing together with instruments ranging from horns to basses and violins. Taking a long wand in hand, Misilleeka walks up to a desk and her scripts set up. She leads the band into a song called The Hymn of Misilleeka. She spoke in her Misilleekan tongue, Aftvi Vitan Getov, in translation from, and so shall begin. The concert commences, with the rings humming like priests woeing and awing. Zucrami clicked the strings of violins, dragons buzzing their bows on the basses, and seraphim doing so as well. Throughout the concert, Misilleeka sung her lines in Misilleekan tongue, as if a queen were leading her troops into a war cry. Basically Sandra's, "We are murderers." And so, it ends with the concert finished. The participants clapped in completion, and Misilleeka looked in awe as they cheered. With Tales of Misilleeka nearly done, we only have one more addition that pertains to the Mortal Brothers 2019 canon. It goes deeper into her involvement in the series, as well as for other aspects that tie into plot points that were initially left unsolved, such as her connections with Etna, the alliance with the genies later on, meeting Megacon, and so on. It'll be a bigger one to cover than any of the three, and will be covered in due time. Thanks for watching, feel free to subscribe to Obscure Titan, I'll catch you next time. Over and out.